to the Phantom's Fanatic YouTube channel. I am back with another review, and this week's review is of Morbius, released this year in 2022. I still think it's 2021. Starring Jared Leto, Matt Smith, Adria Arjona, Jared Harris, and Tyrese Gibson, and it was directed by Daniel Espinosa. The plot of this film is Michael Morbius, played by Jared Leto, is he suffers from a chronic bloodborne illness disease, and so does his best friend Matt Smith, played by Matt Smith. Not that he's not playing the actor Matt Smith; he's just Matt Smith. His name is Milo. Anyways, to cure his disease, he looks into stuff with bats, and through science experimentation, he becomes a creature of the fucking night. I don't know what else accents. I don't know why I'm Scottish. Anyways, let me explain my opinion on Jared Leto. To be honest, I have not seen a lot of his films. The only one I have seen is Suicide Squad. And, not good performance in that. I know that he has had good performances and other stuff. He is completely fine in this movie. I had no problem with his acting, even though, like, some scenes where he's trying to be, like, intimidating, I felt like, okay, it's kind of cringy and stuff like that, but I didn't mind it. The main thing about this movie that I think works is the character relationship between Morbius, his like love interest doctor, totally forgot what her name is, and Matt Smith's character. The reason why I think that's what I like about this movie most is because you have Morbius, who is born with a bloodborne illness, and to cure this, he obviously becomes a vampire. But then there's the ethical question of, like, what he does when he's like that. Obviously, I've seen this done in other vampire movies. It's completely handled fine here. And I had no problem with the portrayal of vampires in this movie, and I feel like Jared Leto captures it very well. The effects are fine, but I have some problems with them that I'll get into, but I was genuinely interested in this character, in this dynamic that was very handled well, because Matt Smith also suffers from a bloodborne illness, so Matt Smith funds, and he's best friends with Jared Leto, and they were raised as kids, and obviously not trying to go into spoilers, but it's pretty obvious to pick out what's going to happen if you've seen the trailer and what I've already implied. But minor spoilers, Matt Smith obviously also gets cured, and he takes a different route into this vampirism than Jared Leto does. And the fact that he created synthetic blood, they explain, like, it works for a bit, but it's not enough to sustain them, and I think that's very interesting to give this, like, you almost think, oh, wait, he has an out, but no, it's not gonna work, and he still needs to figure out a cure for this problem, even though, like, he's a creature of the night who did some fucked up shit. I feel like the film still captures that he feels real guilty about what he did, even though the people he did it to, I'm talking about Morbius, maybe deserved it, but he still realized that this cannot happen again, that this is a curse, he says. This is all stuff in normal vampire movies, but the fact that I feel like Jared Leto and Matt Smith's charisma before that, and especially their characters, almost, the relationship between their characters is handled so well that I really do enjoy the dynamic that each of them go into. But that brings up a bit of a problem that I have for this movie, because I have a good amount of them, and they're glaring. One are the effects. I don't think the effects are necessarily bad. I think it's more the execution of them. So, for the scenes when he's a vampire and doing stuff like that, he leaves, like, a smoky trail behind him, which is fine. You want to differentiate something, and it's like bullet time. This is what he sees because his senses are heightened like a bat. But when you get this fight at the end of the movie where he's using his echolocation to find them, but it's the same like smoky effect, which is cool at first, but when you have an entire battle like that, it's insanely difficult to tell what's going on, especially when it's dark. They try to differentiate it between the two characters fighting because they're both vampires, and they give one of them like a purple trail behind them, which I think that was a good idea, but it's still a very dark scene, and I wasn't really hyped for this battle. Nothing really happens, and I was super confused about Morbius's powers because I thought it was just enhanced movement and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure he flies in this. Like it's very confusing, and I feel like it could have been explained well. And there's like a side plot that is an interesting idea to explore, but it's dropped, and I almost feel like if that side plot was more developed or ended, I feel like that would have been a more interesting idea. But the film itself, I think, is fine because of mainly the relationship between Jared Leto and Matt Smith's characters, because they both are born of bloodborne diseases. One of them was more picked on than the other, and like there's this whole complex syndrome about this person who raised them, like who's his favorite and stuff like that. And well, I think Matt Smith and Jared Leto play the parts well, and they have good charisma, and it makes sense to what they're leading to with, especially how the vampirism works in this movie. I do feel like now this is something I noticed. I'd like to point this out. I usually do not watch the trailers for movies, but I fucking noticed something. After seeing this movie, I looked up the trailer because I wanted to recheck something, and I noticed something that was super jarring to me. I noticed there were scenes that weren't in the movie, and I was like, I realized that maybe the movie would make a lot more sense if those scenes were in the movie. Because they would set up another character being in the movie, they would build a relationship with Morbius and somebody else. And I feel like, yeah, that would work a lot better if those were in the movie. The movie, I think, still works kind of fine without those scenes, but I feel like it is still missing a lot for not having those scenes. But to be honest, the action, some of the earlier action scenes I'm fine with, and more of like, it's almost like a more of a horror take, because obviously this is a vampire movie. They try to take a more horror take to the action, which I'm fine. And there's this really interesting scene where it's like lights flickering. It's like automatic lights in a hospital, and like as they walk, a light turns on above them, and this one woman is walking down here, and in the distance you see the lights like turn off and on kind of slowly, and she notices it. But what I like about that is that even though it kind of has like a kind of a cliche like jump scare ending, I didn't really care about that. But what I do like about that is that as she starts running, you notice that the thing in the distance, the lights are flickering faster. So the thing is going after her very well. I feel like that was a very well directed scene, and the scene where Morbius first becomes a vampire, I feel like is a fine directed scene as well. The side plot with the cops is fine enough. It's a scene that has to happen in all movies like this, and it establishes some world building. It was completely fine. I had no problems with it, and I would like to say, Matt Smith, you're doing a really good job as more villainous roles in this climax. Because what I with this kind of stuff, because also what I like about that is that it almost sets up like, oh, you think he's maybe not a villain, but no. What I like about that is what they try to subvert your expectation to where you think, oh, it's going to be a slow reveal to where he's revealed to be a villain throughout the course of the movie. No, they don't do that. They make it go on very fast, which I like that. They move past these plot points that would be very stereotypical and drawn out fast enough. That's what I like. And the relationship between Jared Leto's Michael Morbius and Andrea Jones, the other doctor, I feel like is fine enough. It kind of ends in a weird way because the way that is establishes how certain things work in this universe is very confusing. And the Morbius's mentor, played by Jared Harris, that's one of the scenes that I noticed was in the trailer. And I was like, okay, that would have made more sense if they kept that in there. And even though I really enjoy Matt Smith's performance when he is villainous in this, I feel like that relationship with that character could have been brought out a bit more. But no, I honestly think this was kind of okay. The the plot idea of a very stereotypical vampire movie is done very well and an interesting take on it that I've seen before, but with these actors in the roles, I honestly thought that they did this very well. And even though I feel like the action, well, I said that I didn't like the smoky stuff. I feel like it was fine when there wasn't like action going on in it. When there was just small scenes of that, I didn't mind it, but the whole climax I thought was like, okay. It's very hard for me to tell what's going on right now, and I feel like they could have done it a bit better, but the echolocation effect itself is fine. It could have just done it. They didn't need it in the climax, in my opinion. But yeah, I if you want to continue the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'd say watch it. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just mildly okay. As I said, the best part of it is this idea of the vampirism with Matt Smith and Jared Leto's characters interacting with each other, even though I feel like if they would have added back in a lot of cut scenes where it establishes another character, it would have made more sense in the end resolution. I wonder why they cut those scenes. I feel like the movie would make a lot more sense if those scenes were still in. But I feel like the movie still works fine. The action is not the best. The effects are fine enough. Jared Leto, completely passable. Matt Smith, I really enjoyed his performance in this. There's some subplots that are dropped that I feel like could have been done better, but I still I not very, but I still thought this was an interesting enough movie to go see. It was worth the ticket cost, which sometimes I'm fine if that's what a movie's going for. If it's worth the price of a ticket alone, I'm not going to complain about it. So I guess if you want to see what's going to go on in the, whole cinematic universe next, this isn't a bad waste of your time. It does have some interesting ideas, but some also interesting stuff that I feel like could have been fleshed out more. So, if you want to see the continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or you want to see a very half and half vampire movie, I would say go watch it. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe down below. Please comment your opinions in the comment section, because I always like to see your opinions. Everybody has them. And yeah, see y'all later.